America, the land of the free, unless the government decides you're not. From stolen bodies to mass surveillance, get ready for the dark side of American history. These stories will make you question everything you think you know about freedom, privacy, and the lengths those in power will go to keep their secrets. Sometimes, the darkest secrets in American history aren't buried in archives or whispered about in old stories. They're written in medical charts, hidden in plain sight. The Tuskegee experiment is one of those secrets. It started with the promise of help. Free healthcare for poor black sharecroppers in Alabama. A good thing, right? Dead wrong. The whole thing was a lie, a monstrous experiment that lasted for 40 years. Doctors tracked hundreds of men with syphilis, a terrible disease, and refused to treat them. They told the men they had bad blood, a vague term to keep them in the dark. Even when penicillin was discovered, a cure for syphilis, they let those men suffer, all in the name of observing the disease. They called it science, but it was a betrayal on a horrifying scale. Those doctors weren't healers, they were like grim reapers in lab coats, watching men waste away. The Tuskegee experiment is a brutal example of how people can twist their power for terrible ends. But power isn't just about cruelty. Sometimes it's about using influence in unexpected ways, and that's where things get really strange. Believe it or not, some of America's most famous faces were also its most secret agents. Take the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of Tibet. You think of him as a peaceful man, which he is. But during the Cold War, the US government was secretly funneling him money. They saw him as a way to fight communism in Asia. It just shows that even someone known for peace can be a pawn in a global chess game. Then there's Julia Child, the famous chef. Before she was teaching us all to make omelets, she worked for the OSS, the guys who became the CIA. Her mission wasn't cooking dinner, it was inventing shark repellent. Seriously, needed it to protect bombs in the ocean. It's easy to think of spies as figures hidden in the shadows, but in the modern world, even our most familiar faces can lead double lives. Take Edward Snowden. Most people just saw him as a computer tech guy, until he blew the whistle on the NSA, revealing a whole shadow world of mass surveillance. The government wasn't just after terrorists. They were tapping into our phones, emails, literally spying on all of us with the help of big tech companies.
I, sitting at my desk, certainly had the authorities to wiretap anyone, from you or your accountant to a federal judge to even the president if I had a personal email.
Snowden's leak blew the lid off the whole thing, shocking the world. Was it wrong? Or is that just how it has to be in the digital age? People are still arguing about that. The whole scandal made us question who we could trust, the government, big corporations, even our own smartphones. Love him or hate him, Snowden forced us to see that in the 21st century, privacy isn't just about drawn curtains, it's about computer code, laws, and the choices we make every time we go online. From secret payments to forged documents, clearly, some governments will go to insane lengths to get what they want. In 2003, the US and UK desperately wanted a reason to invade Iraq. They were convinced Saddam Hussein was hiding weapons of mass destruction, nukes, chemical weapons, the works. The problem? No one could actually find those weapons. So, in classic villain style, they faked the evidence. Documents leaked to the press proved that Iraq was buying up uranium for a bomb. Turns out, those documents were clunkier than a bad school play. The International Atomic Energy Agency exposed them as obvious forgeries. But too late, the US had its excuse. The invasion went forward, and surprise, surprise, no WMDs were ever found. The whole thing was based on a lie, and it blew up in everyone's faces. It's a scary reminder that even in the 21st century, wars can be started with bad intel and a willingness to believe the worst. makes you wonder what other truths we take for granted might be shakier than we think. Sometimes, the real threats to a nation aren't out there on a battlefield. They're in the hearts and minds of its own people. The FBI knew this, and during the Cold War, they became obsessed with anyone they thought might make people question the government. That obsession led them down some dark paths, like when they spied on Martin Luther King Jr. King was a civil rights leader and a hero to millions, but the FBI saw him as a danger. So they tapped his phones, bugged his house, and even tried to ruin his personal life. All because he spoke out against injustice. His story isn't unique. Think of John Lennon, the Beatle who preached peace. The FBI saw him as a troublemaker, a threat to America's war in Vietnam. It even got to the point where the government tried to deport him. Why were they so scared of these guys? They weren't building bombs, they were building movements, making people question if things could be better. And that was considered the real enemy. It's hard to imagine a betrayal worse than the government using your loved ones to further its own goals, yet that's exactly what happened with Project Sunshine. This wasn't about catching spies or stopping assassins. It was a secret government program started during the atomic age with a truly chilling goal: studying radiation sickness. How do you study that? For the US Atomic Energy Commission, the answer was simple and monstrous: steel bodies. Thousands of them, most from babies and young children, taken without their families ever knowing. Scientists tracked how radioactive fallout poisoned them from the inside, all in the name of national security. The worst part? The parents weren't told the truth. Bodies went missing. Excuses were made. Some families probably still don't know what really happened. Project Sunshine is a reminder that even governments with the best intentions can do terrible things in the name of science. But even worse, it shows that sometimes the true monsters aren't in horror stories. They're the people who should be protecting us, making deals with darkness and leaving broken families in their wake. From stolen bodies to spying on its own citizens, it's clear that governments always seem to find ways to justify the unthinkable in the name of national security. That's where the NSA's Thin Thread program comes in. It started as a way to track those overseas who might mean us harm. Built-in safeguards were supposed to protect Americans' privacy, a high-tech needle in a haystack, so to speak. But good intentions don't always equal good outcomes. Suddenly, Thin Thread wasn't just for foreign spies, it was turned on the American people. Phone calls, emails, everything went into the system, like the FBI spying on Lennon and King, but on a massive digital scale. Poof! Just like that, the Fourth Amendment was about as useful as toilet paper. It's one thing for the government to overreach, but it's a whole other level of chilling when people on the inside know it's wrong and still nothing stops. That's where Diane Rourke comes in. She worked for the House Intelligence Committee, so she should have been one of the people the NSA answered to. But once she dug into the Thin Thread program, she realized the agency was breaking the law. Rourke wasn't some crazy conspiracy theorist. She knew the rules, understood why they existed, and she saw how they were being shredded on a daily basis. So she did what she was supposed to, wrote memos, went through official channels, basically begged her bosses to intervene. Nothing. Turns out, the people in charge either didn't care or were in on the secret. Imagine being her, knowing this massive privacy violation is going on, but being blocked at every turn. That's the thing about whistleblowers. They're not just fighting the bad guys, they're fighting a system that's rigged against them. Rourke and others like Thomas Tamm and Edward Snowden remind us that sometimes the real heroes work inside the machine, risking everything to expose it when it goes off the rails. These weren't accidents or mistakes, they were choices made by people in power. The next time someone tells you to trust the government blindly, remember these stories. True patriotism is about holding our nation to its highest ideals, even when it's hard. As always, thanks for watching, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to get yourself some more of that history crack.